Metroid Prime 3 came out in 2007 for the Wii, and it's been stuck there ever since. Or so you may think. Did you know that it got a port? An honest-to-God HD port with dual analog stick controls, new button prompts, and a super simplification of the more gimmicky motion control parts? Yup, it's right here. And would you believe me if I told you that it kinda sucks? Not the actual port. The port's great. It runs through this thing called Prime Hack, which is a fan-made fork of Dolphin, which is itself a fan-made emulator of the GameCube and Wii. Somehow it knows that everything is running on deck and it just works accordingly. It's really neat. Prime Remastered is one of my favorite Switch games by virtue of it simply existing. I've been waiting a long time to give Nintendo more money than they deserve for these, and I'm getting kinda impatient waiting for the other two. So, earlier this year, I played through Prime 3 in its entirety on Steam Deck. And it was great, mostly. Its fatal flaw is that it's kinda unplayable. The Prime trilogy, up until its third and, at least at the time, final entry, are FPS games. First-person shooters in a time where control schemes for these kind of games on console were just starting to figure themselves out. While Bungie and others were laying the groundwork, Retro Studios was just kind of sticking to their guns, embracing the title of a first-person adventure rather than a shooter, which it still ultimately was. Prime 1 and 2 had tank controls and a lock-on targeting system for shooting enemies and interacting with each game's world. The slow pace of the games and the limited number of enemies on screen at one time lent itself pretty well to a control scheme like this. The games layered complexities on top of this simple combat system by adding things like various beam types that enemies were weaker or more resistant to. It was still simple, but it really didn't need to be anything else. The feedback and general game feel was so top-notch, it just didn't matter. It was fun. And obviously, that's not the primary focus of these games. Exploring the labyrinths of Talon 4 and Aether? Solving tiny puzzles, soaking in the atmosphere, reading logs of long-gone life forms, all wrapped in the most beautiful and technically impressive visuals 2002 and 2004 had to offer, were the real draws. It's why they're first-person adventures. Prime 3, early into its development, and I'm sure Retro knew about this even before Prime 2 was even done, found itself surrounded by a completely different set of circumstances to be created under. It was being made for a new console, one that eventually skyrocketed Nintendo into levels of popularity that the GameCube only could have dreamed of. It had a brand new, hyper-accurate control scheme that it had to take advantage of, lest the Wii has a game that doesn't do that, and God forbid there was one normal thing on that machine. Also, the meteoric rise of Xbox brought first-person shooters on console to a brand new height, and they had Metroid fans to please. Do you know how insane of a task that is? Honestly, it's not really that hard. People like Samus Returns for some reason, but I digress. What we ended up getting was a game that leaned into the difficulties that might have caused a stutter step for a less talented group of people. I think Prime 3 is incredible. Right off the bat, Prime 3 comes out swinging with set pieces, motion control gimmicks, voice acting, a story that's told to you, but most importantly, combat is the point now. You're fucking shooting at living things a lot. People might get mad at me for this, and this will be a topic for a future video, but Prime 3's new structure is why it's my favorite in the trilogy. The tank controls and lock-on mechanics of old are no more. Sort of. The lock-on is still there. Let's talk about that, because this is the part of the video you probably actually want to see. Prime 3's lock-on system is pretty similar to the first two's, with a small change. Prime 1 and 2 locked you onto the center of your enemy, or a specific target on an enemy if they're larger, like a boss or something. You don't have to worry about actually aiming, but that was never really the point, like I mentioned earlier. The fun came from strafing to dodge attacks or figuring out what you just have to do to deal damage. Prime 3 retains this philosophy with a change to how lock-ons work. While holding Z still keeps your target in the center of the screen, you often have to use the Wiimote to aim and shoot at weak points on a ton of enemies throughout the game. Pointer aim is also used to solve small puzzles and sometimes open up a new pathway. This is a very fun and engaging way to play this game. The best way, in fact. Motion aiming with the Wiimote is about as accurate as console shooters could get. That's why every RE4 fan likes the Wii version the best. An analog stick being controlled by your stupid ass thumb doesn't even come close to replicating the precision you can craft with your entire arm. That's why this game translates pretty well to a mouse and keyboard, but not to analog sticks. Prime 3 is damn near unplayable in its natural state on a gamepad because the lock-on system is it's just not built for this. The skill ceilings between a joystick and something like a Wiimote or a mouse have never been more apparent to me than when I played this. I had such a difficult time killing any enemy that didn't directly lock me onto them, because this game is just not built for it. There's no aim assist, there's no bullet curving, you just need raw fucking skill. Shots being projectile based doesn't help either. Even if you do play 100% accurately on a controller, it's going to take some time for that shot to actually reach its target. By then, it very well could have moved. I can't show you me playing my favorite example because I'm not going to play half of this on Steam Deck again, but Skytown has rails you grapple along to get from area to area. While you're riding them, you have to shoot these little things that'll knock you off if you don't get them in time. And you can't lock onto them. I spent so much time just trying to get across these things. It was horrible. In order for Prime 3 to actually work on Switch, there needs to be a complete overhaul of the lock-on system. The option for motion aiming can exist, like it does in so many other Switch games, but let's be real, a lot of people just straight up don't want that. And that's going to be hard to do without doing some serious work to how the game functions. We're going to need individual lock-on targets again, maybe some rebalancing to make up for the drop in difficulty that changes like that would bring, among so many other things. I don't even know. Truthfully though, none of this matters if the game isn't fun, and I'll be real, my experience was very negatively affected by playing this game the exact opposite way it was intended to. Playing with a Wii Remote wasn't only a more accurate experience, it was more fun. The layer of engagement motion controls ask of you on top of the normal Metroid Prime experience shocked me when I finally returned to it. At first, I focused too hard on aiming accurately that I threw strafing and just generally avoiding damage completely to the wayside. Now, it didn't cost me any deaths or anything, this game is stupid easy, but you get what I mean. Executing on everything that the game demands of you in combat is way harder when you're using these pointer controls, and I mean that in the best way. It's just so fun. I hadn't intended to replay the game entirely for this video, but I had so much fun during recording that I actually might. All of this to say that there is a huge gap in my enjoyment of this game the further and further away I got from motion controls. If playing on mouse and keyboard brought the fun factor down by maybe 25 or 30%, playing on a controller brought it down like 70. Aside from the broken lock-on system, I think it changes the game in a way that makes it less fun, to the point of me not enjoying it at all. And that sucks, because if this game is getting ported to Switch, then that's going to be the experience most people have. Nintendo found a way to make Skyward Sword work with a traditional control scheme, and I actually really liked it that way. But Skyward Sword is a lot more than its implementation of motion controls. And even then, many first-time players probably lost out on a version of the game that adds quite a bit. Not that Prime 3 is void of its Metroid-y qualities, but it certainly has less of what made up the first two. And that's fine, I wouldn't call it worse, it's just different. And I find myself preferring Prime 3's more linear, shooty style in the grand scheme of 3D Metroid anyways. I'm just worried. It's not that actually making Prime 3 work on Switch is more difficult than it seems, like the video title suggests. It's probably been ready to go forever, and maybe it was super easy to port, who knows. I'm just worried that people are going to play this for the first time the wrong way and say that it sucks, because it's not like Prime 1. If you're watching this before it lands on Switch, play the game the way it was intended. If you do end up waiting, play it with the Joy-Cons. It's about as close as you're going to get without actually buying a Wii, which I totally have. in which I have also totally used my legally obtained copy of the game to gather footage and present this video to you. Prime 4 next year, baby. Let's fucking go. Game of the year 2025.